be looking at really your briefing and really what's going to be happening. So it's going to be a busy day overall because, as you can see, we not only have our big enhanced threat out here, we actually have a moderate threat in eastern Oklahoma. So it's going to be a busy day for the areas of Tulsa all the way up here in the north and clear down here into parts of Texas. So looking overall, that this is your whole country view. We see that really our big areas affected are right in here. We do have a chance of some thunderstorms up in here, and obviously just some general rain showers and thunderstorms throughout the rest of the country there, in that light green. But our big focus is going to be stuff starting really kind of up here and then really strengthening by the time it reaches down here. So we're going to go ahead and actually read the discussion. And they're expecting widespread severe thunderstorms to develop across portions of the southern plains and the Arctic region, damaging winds and gusts possibly exceeding 65 miles per hour, and very large hail can be expected. So according to this right here, there isn't a massive tornado threat. We're not expecting a crazy tornado threat because according to this summary, they didn't list it, but we'll have to read closely to see what's going on. Because as I'm scanning through this, but really what we're expecting, we're seeing a strong frontal forcing. And so that means that we could expect really some squall lines to form. And in the Midwest, we are expecting the same thing. And I mean, we see prefrontal supercells, and they are expecting a few tornadoes across parts of the Midwest. But looking really in the southern plains, what they are expecting is really, they're really trailing west in the Metroplex during the mid-late evening hours. But a big-time storm out of this. We're expecting a pretty big storm. And they're saying it's going to be a frontal squall line. And that's why it has, it's going to be a very unstable atmosphere as highlighted here. And they are allowing some scattered supercells may be observed, but really we're seeing a squall line through here. So going up, really, we know that there's going to be hail. We know that hail is going to occur, and this is interesting because it's actually right here across central Oklahoma. So we're seeing the storms when they first form have the most hail. Obviously, the winds are going to be really kind of heavy and extreme. This is not loading. Heavy and extreme throughout this portion because of what's going on here. Well, you can't really see the bottom of the photo because Pivotal Weather is kind of messing up right now. It's a lot of people on there, but we do have the significant that stretches, and then even that upper 60s. But we'll check that out probably at the end. We'll come back and visit that. But finally, I want to look at our tornado because oddly, looking through this, you would think that since our moderate is really in here, that we would see high chance of tornadoes. Well, here is why this is showing this right now. It is going to be a squall line that is forming. So, not expecting crazy stuff. We actually have just the same chance down here as we do all the way up in Wisconsin. So, I mean, it's a little bit funny to see that. So, I'm going to go ahead and pop over actually to our 4-panel. Maybe that'll show us our... Oh, yeah. So, here is our wind. So, it won't load on the full picture. But as you see, we do have that 45% chance of really damaging winds in here, and then the rest of this area is significant. So really, if you live anywhere in this kind of hashed area that's significant, you can expect some pretty big wind damage. And that's because, as again, we're going to see a squall line that stretches like this. It is going to cover a lot, and it is going to be moving this direction very quickly. So I want to pop over and I want to check out what's going on with our HRRR. Now, a lot of people don't like the HRRR due to the fact that it is very extreme on what we can expect. But I want to show you, we're going to go ahead and pop down to our regional. And which one gets us the best here? Okay, so we're going to use this because our moderate threat and our enhanced threat are all in kind of this whole area. So this is in the morning hours, so right now we do have a bigger supercell, but as we go through the day, we're gonna go ahead and pop ahead to, let's go lunchtime. So this is lunchtime at Central Time. So really, we see these little supercells that are popping up and kind of occurring across the region with some daytime convection. So we could see some very cool looking storms occur. Not expecting anything huge in this morning time. But as we go through the day, we are really expecting, we could have some develop down here in Texas that could be a little bit severe in the south part of Texas. But our big threat is what's occurring kind of up in this whole region later in the day, because as we get later in the day, we see supercell development across Kansas. And we're going to see it enter this region really. It's going to be kind of a quick entry because of this whole squall line. And as we go through the day, we're going to see massive clusters of supercells on the south side of the squall line. We're going to see squall lines, 2 or 3 potentially could line up, but really our supercells, we are seeing all of these supercells that are probably going to be occurring and due to the daytime convection. And temperatures today are going to be up in the 80s and 90s, and we're going to see really 90s down here. We'll see some 80s up here, and we could see some 70s and 80s kind of combating this whole area, but we'll check that out and show you what's going on with the models and why we could see this squall line develop so quickly. So as you see, there is this squall line down through here, and it's going to be very severe weather. And this is where I want to go ahead and pop back out to our national view. And really, when you see the whole thing, it's all associated with this system up here, but we do see a squall line that stretches a few hundred miles. And really, we're seeing it being fueled by these storms up in Nebraska, and there's another squall line here. We could even see one that forms up here. So really, we're seeing kind of this time of day that we're going to see some big time stuff. And as we go through, you just keep seeing the development. We still see some little supercells forming in Texas, but we see supercells on this bottom portion, and then right along the squall line is where we're going to see some supercells develop out front, but then really damaging winds is our big threat. And as we go through the evening, we see them all cluster together. So I want to go back to where one of the most severe times, double checking to make sure there's not a more severe time we could look at. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and take this one. So this one is at 10 p.m., I believe. Yeah, 10 p.m. And we are going to look at what is going on down at the regional level here. And this is going to give you a pretty good idea of what to expect if you live anywhere. And note, our moderate area was right in here. So this storm system right here is what's going to be affecting this whole area. So as we see, it is a very pointed squall line, so very quick winds. And we do see some bow echoes occurring along the squall line. We actually see multiple of them at times. So we could see wind speeds in all 3 of these bumps exceeding, potentially, we could see 65 to probably 80 mile per hour winds. That's why damaging wind gusts are a big threat. And then there is a small tornado threat, but I mean, when you have cells like this, where you see kind of a bump like this, generally in here, we could see some rotation. So there is possibility of some rotation, some tornadoes with this, but really looking at it, we have huge amounts of hail expected. I mean, we see massive numbers on here. We even see up into the 70s on a few of these readings. So big time storms moving through it. And we do have these little supercells still kind of coming out in front of it, and then we will see an extension of this line probably down to here as it moves. But this whole storm system is moving generally in this direction. So while we don't have a crazy huge threat the whole day, what we can expect though is that this is going to be a damaging storm. And so I want to go ahead and I want to show you where our warmest temperatures are at, because this is something I find interesting. So when we look at the temperature right along this time, we do see 90s, and then we see the battle of the 80s and 70s. So when we see temperatures 99, we see 100 down here, 105 in California. That's crazy. But really, if you see how this is tracking, it's tracking like this. Doing that red, or maybe switch to the black. So we kind of see 2 areas of feeding occurring. We see the bigger area, some warmth kind of punching into this north area, and that's why we're going to see the development of the squall line here. And that's why we're seeing it, you kind of see right in here is where it's going to be at. But then as we travel through to where that scan was taken, that last scan of that super severe weather, you can see where the squall line is at. And a big key thing is we see some triangulation occurring. I'm going to switch colors actually. for this. So that's our squall line there, and before we had seen this arrow all the way up in here that had supported this squall line. But looking at this, what our big thing is, this is our squall line, remember? Our big thing is we have a little triangle in here. And what that means is we're seeing warm air be fed into this storm system. And so that's going to allow this storm system to develop and keep moving at a very rapid pace. So I want to go ahead and look at our severe weather here. And obviously they said the supercells can occur, but I want to go to our most unstable cape because I want to see at this level what's going on. And we're going to focus on kind of our moderate range here, just so we can kind of get that good idea of what to expect in this moderate range. So going back to lunchtime, we see that there is a massive amount of energy down in here. We see the basically 5,000s. We can see them right around 5,000. And if you remember what I said from the last time in the briefings, tornadoes can occur at 500. They're most likely between 3,000 and all the way up to 8,500. So when you see we see that core right around 5,000 somewhere in here, really in this area, that's where you know there is that chance of some really big storms. Now this is a storm system that even though all of this energy is here, A, it won't use all of it, and B, it won't probably be tornadic as of right now. We're not seeing, according to any of these, any big time tornadic storms. The big key thing is though, we're going to see some supercell development. And that is going to allow some of this to be kind of dragged northward, and that's going to support that squall line coming down through here later in the day. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the mid-afternoon, and we see some really high numbers, 5,500 in some spots, and you kind of see the formation of the dry line starting to form up here. And a key thing is we see this in some little clumps that are going to keep building this storm as it travels through. And I'm going to head to just about dinner time. And as you see, there is just clumps of really high energy. And a little key thing is this is the squall line right through here. Nothing out over here. We see readings of 33, 44. So this storm is using all of the energy it's heading down into. And it's entering into areas where we're seeing upper 5,000s. So that means that this storm is going to be really lasting for quite a while. And as we see, we even hit up into a 6,250. So we are seeing massive amounts of energy be fed into this. And while there isn't a huge tornado threat, that is why we see such a big wind threat, is because of what's happening. And we did see this kink on the radar right in here that will be occurring. So we're seeing that there are surging parts that are surging kind of away from the general vicinity of this, which is why we do the potential of rotation in some spots, but not expecting any really big tornadic system to occur out of this. But all night, as we see, it is entering pockets of this really exceeding really energy is going to be feeding this storm system, and as it goes through. So I want to take you now to our NAM CONUS, because this is going to show us a extreme detail of that same time. And I'm going to go ahead and flash back to where it was kind of the most severe, is where it's heading through kind of this part of Oklahoma, really down, because note we had those tornadoes in McDill and that whole area down in here and even down in here. So that's why when we're seeing this whole squall line through here and with energy in the 6,000s being fed into it, that's why we can be worried, is because we're seeing all of this energy is being funneled right into this whole area, and then that is kind of leading off over into this area. So that's why we are seeing this whole system in here where we're seeing that moderate threat. And so as we go through, I want to check out what our SIGTOR is, because it's going to be quite interesting. And we go from the area where this was crazy high to now we see our highest chance of tornadoes being in this area. Now note, we are only seeing a 5 or a 6, but the problem is a 5 or a 6 is actually quite high. So we do have a high chance. But our key is for this storm system, it is moving at 65 to 80 mile per hour. So tornado development, if one is to be put down, is going to be so rapid you won't have time to see it coming, and it won't be there for long. So it could only travel 0.1 miles. We could have a longer track tornado, but not expecting really any of this to be occurring. And then just to kind of show you back a few hours what was occurring here, we start with very little energy, and then it is fed all the way up through into kind of this bigger amount of energy that is forming over southeast Oklahoma. But note, over the course of 3 hours, so from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m., we see the SIGTOR drop off the map. And note, there is nothing down here. Nothing is formed. We see a few supercells, not expecting those to be tornadic. But it loses its total potential because it's moving so quickly. I mean, in a matter of 3 hours, we moved from all the way up here in central Oklahoma, and now we are all the way down here starting to get into parts of central Texas. So that's our key for this storm system today is we're not expecting a huge tornadic threat, but wind speeds are going to be off the charts. So I'm going to go ahead and pop over to our wind because you will be able to see this entire squall line form. And it's going to be nuts whenever we see this. So this is our NAM CONUS, and we will pop to another model to just kind of show you a very similar thing. But see, we start out with these 48 knots, and remember, 1 knot is 1.1 mile per hour. So keep that in mind as we go through. So once you get to 50 knots is 60, and then it keeps going up through there. So 1 knot or 50 knot is 60 mile per hour, so we'll keep that in mind. So basically, we have 50 or 60 mile per hour winds in that area of North Oklahoma. So flashing ahead, we go within 3 hours, and we have all the way up. Was that 77? Did I just see that? 77 knots. So if we go ahead and flip ahead, we have 77 knots expected. So if we go ahead and pop to our knots to mile per hour, and we plug this in, I just want to make sure I have this right in my head. 77 knots is 88 mile per hour. And we see that in multiple places. We see it not only up here, we see it here, and traveling all the way down this squall line as it forms. We are seeing 80 mile per hour wind gusts. And that's at ground level, because I have it set to 850 millibars, which is right about ground level. Like, that's crazy. So that's why, and I mean, flipping ahead, we see 3 hours ahead, we see the winds really pick up with this system. And rather than seeing kind of a little squall line with a lot of winds, we are seeing the really formation of a squall line that comes all the way down through here. But our key is we are seeing all the way up in the 60s, 70s, and I think there's a 79, so we're seeing potentially 90 mile per hour wind gusts in parts of really the Red River down through here. So our key is, if you live in here, expect crazy high winds. And that's going to be at 11 p.m., so 10 p.m. Central Time. So thinking about all of that, and we do have heavy wind gusts right behind it too, but that is expected. So as we go through the nighttime hours, we will see this storm system kind of break apart in a way. We still see very heavy wind gusts, but we see a very big dip occur down through here. Rather than seeing a neat squall line, we see it kind of break apart. And so we will see the northern squall line just go, but we will see the heaviest winds down here. Well, the heaviest consistent. We still see in this squall line winds through here that are very strong, but we see a clump of winds in central Texas, or east central Texas, that will be very heavy. And so that's going to allow some big time wind damage today. So I want to go ahead and head back to our national view, and I want to go ahead and kind of put a location out that I think is going to be our best chance. So here is our kind of overall threat for today. We're seeing enhanced and moderate. I want to go now and show you the areas that, if you live in this area, I want you to watch out for. So we see that all the way through here, it's going to be very damaging wind gusts. So once again, our squall line at its most dangerous time, well, dangerous times, we saw one form here, and it's the same system, but it kind of develops a little bit further. So in here is where really squall line we have 1 and 2 our biggest threat is going to be somewhere within this pocketed line. So that's what the National Weather Service is thinking our highest threat is. But really, I want you to pay attention. If you live anywhere along the Mississippi and all the way down in areas of central Texas, you're going to have very damaging winds overnight. So with this squall line, where is the most damaging threat and what will be the worst, I believe? So I think anywhere, and it will extend into the enhanced, but if you live basically anywhere along the Red River, right in this area, and then also I want you to watch out up here, because we will see both. We could see rotation in this one I'm coloring in right now. That's our highest chance of rotation is up here, but it looks like the most damaging winds are here. And then into the overnight hours, our other threat is basically down in here, and then we could also see it right along here. So really, these are the ones that aren't colored in, are the overnight, so basically the very early Wednesday morning, and then the colored in ones are here on Tuesday. So Tuesday really evening to kind of that nighttime. So if you live anywhere in the shaded ones, pay attention today and into tonight, because they are going to be very damaging wind gusts, a lot of hail occurring. And if you live in these outer ones that aren't shaded in, prepare for very heavy wind gusts overnight. A lot of damage can happen. Trees can fall on houses in 88 mile per hour, and we see them upwards of 90 mile per hour at times. That potentially could be catastrophic to your home if a giant tree falls on your home. Or we have buildings, we have populated areas down in here. Note that is very low tornadic winds, and so it's even hurricane winds. So we have hurricane force winds, and that's a lot to expect. And we have squall lines that are going to be forming once again. We see a squall line here, and another squall line here. So if you live anywhere in this boxed area, this black box, I will hatch it for you. If you live anywhere in here, prepare and really just be weather ready, because it's going to be a very severe day and even into tonight. So thank you all for watching, and that was basically the entire briefing of what to expect for today. And once again, not a huge tornadic threat. There is still that potential. Not expecting a huge tornadic threat. Our big thing is damaging winds. We are going to see winds of upwards of 90 mile per hour. So you can expect that. And since this is going through populated areas, I'd highly suggest you get your stuff done, your errands and everything this morning, rather than tonight or even this evening, because we're going to have a very big damaging wind threat heading through tonight. So thank you all again, and stay safe and healthy.